possible it's invaluable. It's invaluable. And I celebrate, this legacy of Gerber Hart, and I'm so happy that it's still here, and that everyone is here tonight contributing to this incredible work. And I hope that CHM can continue to be a partner in that work. But I really think that none of this would have happened without the Gerber Hart collection, and certainly without those kinds of founders and activists doing what they did, and to make someone like Greg even document it through his collection and have it come to us. And Pearl Hart was also surveyed for many years, perhaps the longest person, who was surveyed by the Red Squad for most of her life, and we have that information as well. And so there are so many different levels of complexity and ways that institutions can share, and that researchers and scholars and students and anybody can really learn to get a greater perspective or a multifaceted perspective from what we all have to offer, doing the hard work of maintaining that scholarly quality through everything that we do in Chicago. And so I just really wish to celebrate and commend this institution, its leadership, and everyone here who has greatly contributed for all that you do, because it makes my work possible too. So I thank you.
Would you like to entertain some questions?
Oh, yes.
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 Do you have documented that, and from 1993, the process that your institution went through to put on that first exhibit?
I don't know. I mean, we do have that. We do have a catalog, but I don't know. And I would have to go back to look at the catalog again to see if there was any queer content in there at all. And I have a feeling that someone who reached out, and maybe Russell Lewis can verify this for me. I mean, we really do need to have a sit down, because it wasn't until he wrote the foreword, the preface, I should say, to our Out in Chicago anthology, which we published when the exhibition opened, that a lot of this stuff, these reflections about Archie, this past and the relationship with Gerber Hart really came out and became very clear to me. And Gerber Hart is a place that's been very dear to him, to Russell as well. I think that, and he was there. He's been at CHM for a long time too. And so I think that there was someone, I don't know who it was who reached out to him. Maybe it was Archie, maybe it was someone else at the museum who was gay. Scott LaFrance was also a very instrumental person at the museum. So it could have been many different people, and maybe Russell can confirm that for me. But someone said, hey, there's gay history here and it's not represented in what we have on display. And so they took steps to address that.
It's fascinating. I know from the 80s Archie and working
Yes.
with archives
Yes.
at that time. And interesting for a mainstream institution to do something like this, particularly with the hierarchy that takes place at your institution. That was the fascination of where you have all this material, but a lot of it stays in the back room.
Yes.
And no one deals with it. And what was the impetus and then the spark and then the push to get it out there? Because once you do it, you can't take it back. And there are a lot of people who are afraid of that on the board who don't want to take that step. So
Yeah.
that's where that impetus to go further with other things could be capitalized on this experience of what went on, and even for both Gerber Hart and your organization to be able to move forward to use that as understanding what it takes to get it to the forefront.
I'll tell you, and are you asking or referring to the Out in Chicago exhibition in this case?
Well,
Or just all of it?
all of it in '93 you came out with this, and then it wasn't like it went in the closet, it continued, it went forward. And Archie was a product of a mixed racial parents at his time, which I'm sure brought forward a great deal of sensitivity to other groups. And he was an incredible person, but also quiet. You never quite knew while he was doing all of this.
Yeah.
So I'm thinking yes, there was a lot done, but I'm fascinated by what would be done for a mainstream institution to get it to the forefront, because there's so many other institutions, even to approach them with this knowledge, to be able to continue to move forward.
Something that that I'm involved in right now that's supposed to come out in maybe fall of 2014 or possibly winter of 2015 is a publication sponsored by the American Association of State and Local History, which is a publication about creating LGBT exhibits, mainly aimed at mainstream institutions or smaller historical societies. So Jenny Breyer and I are co-authoring an essay about our experience and advice for other museums who really wish to embark upon this kind of process, and encouraging people to do so, and that it's absolutely worthwhile to turn a clear lens to the history of your community and your institution. It's easier said than done, I suppose, for many different people, and especially for many of my colleagues on the LGBTQ Alliance of the American Association of Museums. Some of them work in very small places, some of them work in urban areas, but still encounter a great deal of homophobia or discrimination or resistance, whether they be large or small. So it's always a struggle. You know, it continues to be a struggle. In our case, I think that there were perhaps board members who were concerned. I mean, I think whenever there's always a kind of, there's a concern, oh, something's going to cause controversy, or, whenever you try to, kind of shake everything up, there's a concern. And we were planning the Out in Chicago exhibition at the time that the scandal broke about hide-seek and some of the censorship and removal of a video that went on there. And there was an immediate worry on the part of the museum that we would have a lot of protests. Now Chicago's doing a gay show, what's in it, what's it all about? And we really didn't encounter that at all. In fact, the opposite. The exhibition was very, very well received, and we received a lot of mainstream attention for it. I think whenever you talk about sexuality in a public museum or a mainstream museum, it's a risk. And so we tried to push the envelope as much as we could. We didn't always win our battles, but I think that we made a tremendous amount of headway in terms of what the museum was comfortable doing and the kinds of material and content that counts as history at that museum was very, very important. I think that the museum in the 1990s then showed considerable interest and commitment, certainly through that influence, Russell Lewis's influence, and then Lonnie Bunch as president, who came in at the turn of into the late 90s and 2000s. He was someone who was very, very committed to inclusive history, and he was there at the beginning to really initiate this committee out at CHM. And so he certainly encouraged and handed off the baton to Gary Johnson, who very, very much supported the project. But I think it's very tricky, and it's interesting to see what may lie buried, unexposed, unopened, or unexplored for many years that people happen to collect accidentally. That doesn't always happen for a place like Gerber Hart, which is dedicated to collecting LGBT. And certainly places like CHM have a different kind of mission or a broader collecting scope. But when we started the project, we were thinking really about strictly gay material or queer material, and it wasn't until we started to think and read some of the evidence and the work that was done by people like Greg that we had to dig deeper, and that we maybe had to give up some of the obvious choices to really reveal collections that no one had seen before and no one had certainly thought about in this light that were very much revealed in history.
Do you feel that some of the policies you have helped to allow you to explore, as opposed to this coming from within forward, that you could use these policies to say, hey, we've said this, to be able to leverage, to be able to do what you do?
I really appreciate those questions, because the museum has made a commitment to continue the Out at CHM series. We still have wonderful support for it, and it's part of what we hope to continue to collect, certainly. But I will say, in all honesty, that we really don't have a program in place to put on permanent displays of LGBT material. And in the essay that we're publishing for ASLH, this is a challenge that we've issued really to the museum, to say that we think that there should be permanent, ongoing, visible reflection of LGBT history in the museum all the time. And it hasn't really happened. And I think it doesn't always happen because it's, it's work. There are exhibitions that exist, they're done. When they're done, we don't necessarily want to think about them anymore. But when I was at the museum conference AAM this May, I did a presentation where I compared the display that we did of Jane Addams and Hull House in the Out Chicago exhibition compared with the display of Crossroads, the display of Hull House and Crossroads of America, Chicago Crossroads of America. And to say that for a while there were two different stories about Jane Addams and Hull House at CHM. Now we're back to one, and it's back to the one that really, it shows her separate from other people, separate from other women, and doesn't talk about her relationships and her intimacy and the women who really established and sustained that institution. And I think that it shouldn't be that way. So I don't like to think about us going back to the way that things were if the institution has a commitment to continue to do this history, so to speak.
Doesn't this also give you a springboard to go forward, not just for our group, but for other groups to
Yes.
cover the full expansion of diversity, which would then give you the opportunity to maybe be able to revisit without it looking like you're just focusing?
Yeah, exactly. Marianne?
I think what you just said is so important, to have a few of the Chicago icons explain their lives in a full way. It's critically important, and so how was the decision made to not do it that way and to sort of revert?
I really don't know. I wasn't present for a lot of those decisions or conversations. I have to say, we put the question forth before, and we continue to be asked, including tonight. We've been asked many, many times, especially when the exhibition was closing, is there going to be a permanent piece of this? Is some aspect of this exhibition going to be on permanent display? And sometimes, it costs a lot of money and it gets complicated to adjust and amend existing displays or existing exhibits. It gets very difficult to find within all that square footage where that room can be made. But I think it should be.
Okay, so I have a couple
but
of...
I've been told that's not possible, at least not right now.
We'll see.
Yeah.
I have a couple other little questions.
But it continues to be, I'm on my soapbox about it.
Okay, good, stay there. So we heard about where the men would hang out.
Yeah.
The athletic club and the saloon. And so where were women hanging out?
Well, women were hanging out at Hull House. They were, oh my goodness.
Well, in settlement houses.
In settlement houses. And I'll tell you a story that I'm hoping I can include in a future exhibit at some point is the story of the Madonna Center. You know the Madonna Center? Mm-hmm. So it was a story that we researched of a Mary and a Marie who were in a lifelong romantic friendship or relationship. And I don't mean to be disrespectful by this, but I tended to liken them as the Catholic Hull House. And the papers at Marquette University detail letter upon letter upon letter of this affectionate relationship and love, and the good days and the bad days, just incredible. And we ended up really not having room for it and didn't include it in the exhibition. But it's an incredible story, and those were the kinds of places where women congregated, they were of like minds, they could do their work and live their lives. And yes.
Catholic worker?
University of Chicago. Pardon?
Catholic worker, the Catholic worker?
Catholic worker. And these women really, rejected, again, the status quo, in this case, of the Jesuit leadership. And they were based at Holy Family. But they ended up getting their own, they had their own house, they had their own building, and they lived together, and it was kind of,
They were based at Holy Family Parish on Roosevelt?
They served Holy Family. And then what was the other one? What's the one on Halsted at the corner? St. Francis.
St. Francis of Assisi
Yes.
Church? Yeah.
They were there too. And so they would kind of leap from, really establishing a community center, really serving Italian immigrants in that Taylor Street district as well, just a few streets over from where Hull House was. But yeah, those settlement houses, magnets for women. So that's incredible. And I found after the exhibition had closed that we have in our collection, our costume collection, Marie Plamondon's Red Cross uniform. And I just about died because I thought I wish we had room. And when you display costume, it gets really, it's expensive, it's big, it takes up room, but we had this incredible ensemble from another lesbian powerhouse, even though we wouldn't call her lesbian. We call her woman-loving woman, something like that. But yeah, that's an awesome, it's an awesome story, and
I just want
have room to tell it.
Want to make a comment, and that is I have, my brother-in-law is from Denmark. And as life went on, I began to realize how much he did not know about America. And I gave him a biography, the most recent wonderful biography of Jane Addams, which he read and just savored every word. And he said, he had never encountered or known that there were people like that